Welcome to the Audience Converter Podcast, the podcast for converting your audience from strangers to loyal fans. We dive deep and discuss how entrepreneurs, consultants, and coaches can level up their business to help more people in the world. Now here's your host, the creator of the Audience Conversion Method, Kimberly Weitkamp.
Are you a community leader who's looking to really build your community through the power of email? It's the first chance you have to get in front of the right people, and you should make the most of it. So many community leaders take the template approach, and you've lost your community before they've even found you. How about crafting the perfect welcome series instead? You can grab my guide, Crafting the Perfect Welcome Series, at theaudienceconverter.com/giveaway. Discover the tips and tactics I use to help my clients get up to an 80% open rate. When people open those first few emails, they're more likely to continue opening your messages, engaging, and buying from you. Build your community the right way with a welcome series that converts. Grab your copy at theaudienceconverter.com/giveaway. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I'm Kimberly Weitkamp, your host, conversion copywriter, and marketing strategist, focusing on how to use your marketing to actually build a community that is going to build your business, build your impact, and of course, build the life that you want to be living. So today I want to talk about a word that a lot of business owners kind of treat like a dirty word, right? It's one of those 4-letter words, even though it's, let me count here, 6 letters. And that is the word change. Now, there's a lot of resistance to change. One of the things I found really compelling and most interesting about the pandemic when it started was that a lot of people were like, oh my gosh, this is a huge change. I don't know what to do. Have you found that everything's changed? What in your world has changed? Why do things have to change? Change. It was almost as if change was this horrible thing in our world. And the reality is that change is good. Change is great. I actually hosted an entire summit on why change is powerful, why hitting reset, why hitting change, why going in a new direction was a good thing in your business. And I want to revisit that topic a little bit today. So change at its core is not a positive or negative. We get to put that positive or negative spin on change. So in your business, if you are building a community-based business, right? You've got your superpower, you've got your secret sauce, whatever it is that you call it, and you're building a community around that so that you can make a bigger impact in more people's lives. You can bring more people into your world, all of those wonderful things. And, change just means that something is different. Something has transformed that is different than what you started with. And that's not a negative. It's not a positive. It's just an actual change, right? Something is different. And that doesn't have to be a good or bad thing. And I view change as kind of necessary, actually, to the success of our business. There's a common phrase, and I apologize, I can't remember who actually said it, but it's this idea that what got you here won't get you to where you're going. Right? So what you've done in the past got you to where you are. But if you're unhappy with where you are, then the same thing is not going to get you to where you want to go. And here's a good example of that, right? If you started out serving people one-to-one only, and you want to now serve people in a group, the way you got to the one-to-one success is not necessarily going to get you to the group success. If you started in a completely different niche, in a completely different service, in a completely different world than where you want to be focused now, the tasks, the processes, the philosophies that you use to get there are not necessarily going to serve you to get to where you want to go. And now here's a great example, personal story here for you. When I first got started as a copywriter, right? I was strictly a copywriter. I got trained, I got certified. I was a verified direct response copywriter. And everyone told me the money is in finance and alternative health. And I was like, okay, great. I want to make a living at this. So I guess I'm going to go into finance and alternative health. And I took a program specifically for how to write sales letters for that industry. And I quickly changed my mind because I realized I didn't want to do it. I realized that niche, that focus was not the right fit for what I wanted to be doing in the world. I did not want to take such a negative look at the world. I did not want to be doing research on the types of things I would need to do research on. I did not want to be spending as much time strictly writing incredibly long 50-page plus sales letters, and quickly realized it's not what I wanted to be doing. So I changed my mind and I started looking for a new direction. Now, that change was not positive. It was not negative. It was an evaluation. Is this really what I want to be doing? Yes, no. Okay. Change or stay the course. So anytime that you are presented with an opportunity to change something, the first question to ask is this in line with what I want to do? Right? Is this going to lead me to my goal, or is this going to lead me away from my goal? If it's going to lead you to your goal, keep going. If it's going to lead you away from your goal, evaluate. Is your goal the goal you want? Is your goal the same? Is your goal still the same goals as when you started? So when I first got started copywriting, I was like, okay, I want to make money. I want to make a living. This is the way to do it. Quickly realized that even though that could be the most lucrative niche, it was not the niche I wanted to work in. So then I heard another thing. I heard that, you know what? B2B was where it was at, writing for business to business. And I said, okay, fine, I'll go work with business to business. Now, unlike a lot of copywriters, I did not have 20 years of corporate experience in a particular industry. So I said, okay, I'm going to change. I'm going to write for B2B, but what am I going to focus on? And I said, okay, I'll focus on the travel software industry. I'm a digital native. I really don't remember a time before we had a personal computer in our house. I remember a time before the internet, but we pretty much have always had the internet as well. I'm a digital native, right? I grew up in a household where electronics were always there. And I come from it, though, from a perspective of having to show other people. Oftentimes, my friends, they would come to me and they'd be like, I got computer problems. Can you help me? And oftentimes I could. Why? Because my dad was an IT guy. My dad's an IT guy. He does networking and he does, I don't know, stuff with software and a bunch of other things in terms of working with electronics and working with information technology. So I knew about that kind of stuff and I could translate. That was the power, right? I could translate from the companies, what they were doing, into what their clients were looking for. And I loved travel. I wanted to use the power of copywriting to expand what travel companies could do and the types of impact they can make in the world. Because I'm a big believer that if more people could travel the world, if more people could travel outside of their homes, we can create a more connected and global minded community. So I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to do this. And you know what? For a while, it worked. For quite a while, I worked in that industry. I built a name. I made contacts. I got people to say yes to working with me. I stayed as an independent contractor, worked with a variety of companies, and got to see a lot of really cool and amazing things. But after a couple of years, I realized that there wasn't enough opportunity for growth. And that's another thing to keep in mind, right? A lot of people I work with are wanting to scale what they do. Now, that doesn't just mean that they want to work with more people, or they want to grow their business. It means they want to increase their impact. It means they want to increase the transformation they can give to people. So they want to scale, they want to grow. Well, again, the philosophies, the marketing strategies, the mindset, all of those things that you use to get to where you are, if you want to scale, by its very nature, you need to change, right? If you want to scale from 10,000 to 100,000, what you need to do is probably going to be very, very different. So when we talk about change, especially about change in terms of business, it's not a good or bad thing. It is simply an evaluation and taking that next step. So I knew, you know what, I was a little bit sad. I'd done all of this work to build a reputation in travel software and in the travel industry. And I had a moment of revelation. Somebody recommended me for a project. It was a big name hotel chain, international hotel chain, higher end. And it was a particular location and they were looking to overhaul their website. They wanted to rewrite all of the pages of their website. They had over 60 pages of content and copy to be written. And they wanted all of it optimized for SEO, which is something they had not done in the past. I said, okay, great. Yeah, let's talk. Let's talk goals. Let's talk what your plans are. And then they told me their budget. And their budget was about the cost of what I call a basic website, an about page, a services page, a contact page, and a home page, right? 5-page website. That was their budget. But they had a 60-page website. And it was going to take 3 to 4 months. And it was going to take a lot of keyword research and a lot of work on the back end to build up their SEO juice. And they said, yeah, here's our budget. And I realized that if this huge international change that has a true marketing budget doesn't understand the value of a properly positioned website, especially one that's focusing on the technical aspects of SEO, then there's not a lot of chance for people who are smaller, independent, because oftentimes those bigger companies would hire marketing agencies. And I wasn't at the agency level yet. So I realized, look, there's not a lot of opportunity for growth here. So I changed my focus. Now, some people would say I was nuts, that I was crazy. I completely changed what I did. I went from writing for companies that were explaining their technology to their prospects to get them into a 12 to 18-month sales cycle and switched to working with entrepreneurs. And then from entrepreneurs, I focused even more on working with people who were coaches who wanted to build communities. And that was a big change. It was a huge change. But you know what? I made that change and I doubled my income in a year during a pandemic. And I created a huge community of people who know who I am, enjoy what I do, understand the value I bring to them, and recommend me to others. More recommendations in the last 6 months than I ever got working in the technology industry. So change is not a bad thing, right? Change is crucial for us to reach our business success goals. We constantly are changing. We're constantly pushing our own boundaries, right? Now, how do you plan for that kind of change? Well, you take stock, right? You go through what you're doing. You look at all the different things that you're focused on and you evaluate, right? There's that word again. You ask yourself, is this on track with the goals I want to meet? Or does it fall short? And if it falls short, what do I, here's the word, need to change? Right? What do I need to change to make that transformation actually happen? And it can be difficult, right? I mean, it was scary. It was not easy for me to decide, you know what? I am going to essentially get a completely new audience, completely new types of offerings, still doing copywriting, still using all of my knowledge, still using my many years of experience, but in a completely new niche. And a niche that was so far removed from what I was working in that everyone in my community before was unable to introduce me to somebody in my new community. And I made that launch and I made that transition and I opened the doors to my business about 5 days before the first lockdown in the United States. But that change was also really well timed because as I mentioned, I was working in the travel industry, specifically software for the travel industry, but I was working in the travel industry. And that was one of the hardest hit industries during this pandemic. So even if I had stayed, then I would have been forced to change instead of it being my choice. And so by it being my choice, by me deciding, look, I'm going to look at what I'm doing, look at where I am and decide where I want to be and making the choice that where I want to be is changed. So I am going to make a pivot. I am going to make a reset. I am going to declare a new niche. However you want to phrase it, it's not a bad thing. And it worked really well in my favor, right? I have tons of happy clients. I'm getting to expand into new areas. I'm going beyond just straight copywriting, really working into strategy and business development and planning out for successful business strategy tied into marketing strategy. All of these really exciting things that would have never been possible if I stuck with, well, this is what I've been doing. I've put all this time into it. Of course, I need to keep going. So how do you plan for change? Well, you can fly by the seat of your pants if you really, really want to. Or you can just kind of have a guideline, right? Have a roadmap for what you want to achieve. It doesn't have to be super detailed, but it does help to have an idea as to where you want to end up. If you make a huge, big, bold declaration, I am closing my business of 10 years, I'm opening a brand new business, and I'm going to go drive on the road as an RV and travel the country. That may be what you want to do. But what do your goals look like? What do your roadmap look like? What do your pit stops and guideposts along the way, what does that look like? So in order to plan for change, all you need to do is sit down and work out, what are your goals? What are your metrics? What are your happy places, right? You're going to make this huge, big, bold change. What does that look like for you? How do you know if you're going to be successful when you've done this? And then making the commitment to yourself that if at the point you reach those metrics and they're not where you need to be, for example, you say within 3 months, I want at least one client, and you don't have that client in 3 months, you take the time to evaluate. Do you want to continue on, or do you want to switch course? Do you want to continue on, or do you want to take a left turn? Either answer is okay, as long as you're checking in with yourself, right? You're checking in with yourself and you're really evaluating, is this still serving my purpose? Is this still moving me towards my goals? And you are the only one who gets to decide that. So oftentimes I'll get asked, right? How do I grow my community? How do I grow my business? How do I use email marketing? And the truth is, there's a lot of tactics I can tell you, right? Take step 1, follow step 2, go to step 3. But at the end of the day, none of that matters if you don't set your own metrics, if you don't set your own goals, if you don't set your own standards for what is and isn't a success. So change, I just want to kind of challenge this idea that change is bad, or that change needs to be scary, right? Change does not need to be scary. It's not necessarily bad. It is simply you taking the time to check in with yourself and see, are you still on the road to where you want to go? Now, I've been talking about change a lot because there are some big, big changes coming for the podcast. And I will be talking about them in another episode. But for right now, I want you to set aside 30 minutes, just 30 minutes for you to check in with yourself. What were your goals for this year? How close are you to achieving those goals? And if you're not close, evaluate what you might need to do to get closer to those goals. And if that involves a change of some sort, whether that's not posting on social media, increasing your number of emails, upping your podcast appearances, whatever that looks like, remember, change is not a bad thing. Change is simply you taking the time to check in and make sure you're still on the right path. And if you're not, to veer towards the goals, the processes, and the implementation strategies that will actually get you to where you want to go. No one else gets to define your success but you. It is your business. It is your community. They are your coaching clients, right? They're your customers. They're your students. It's your business. You get to define what your success metric looks like. Nobody else does. And if at some point you realize, you know what? Yeah, I've got 150 students in my program, but I don't want that many. I can't give the right kind of experience. So I want to cut that down to 10 people at the current level and 100 people at a lower level. That's easier for an entry point, for example. You get to decide if that's the change you want to make, and that is okay. Thank you so much for listening to this episode about change, the power of change, and why change is not a positive or a negative, but another step along the path to you reaching your goals. Until next time, keep calm and make a change.
Thanks for listening to the Audience Converter Podcast. For more information and important links about today's show or for access to our website, visit theaudienceconverter.com. Take a moment to rate and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts.